You stupid, crazy. You bitch.
I'm really sorry.
The movie begins with Fabio meeting Don Lewis, a drug lord and his boss. Fabio announces that he is leaving the business and will hand over all the gang's accounting records to another associate. Don Lewis smiled, said he would miss Fabio, and they raised their glasses in a toast. Fabio then left, while Don Lewis signaled to Marco, his right-hand man. Fabio was not foolish. He knew his boss would take revenge on anyone trying to leave the drug trade, including himself. So he took 3 loyal bodyguards and hurried home, knowing they had only 1 hour to escape the country. Fabio returned home and told his wife, Alicia, that it was time to leave. He asked his young daughter, Catala, to pack her things, but she said she was already ready. Fabio instructed her that if anything happened, she should go to the U.S. Embassy and give them a chip containing all the information about Don Lewis's illegal activities. He also gave his daughter the address of his brother. Fabio then handed her a necklace engraved with a Catala flower. She was named after this flower because her mother always grew them. A few minutes later, Marco and several gang members arrived and slaughtered Fabio's men. Fabio and Alicia grabbed their guns and tried to fight back, but they were killed. Catala sat at the table, stunned as she listened to the sound of gunfire. She quickly swallowed the chip. Moments later, Marco and his men approached her. Marco pretended to be friendly, claiming he was her father's friend, but revealed that Fabio had taken something from Don Louis the chip. Catala leaned in close, then suddenly grabbed a knife hidden under the table and stabbed Marco's hand. She quickly slipped through the window and jumped outside. It seemed her parents had taught her survival skills in case something like this ever happened. Catala ran as Marco's men chased after her. Even though they had Parker runners, motorcycles, and cars, she managed to escape by hiding in the sewers. She lifted the sewer cover and made her way to the U.S. Embassy, where she was taken to meet an agent. He asked about her father, and Catala replied that he was dead. When he pressed further, she quickly vomited and handed him the chip. It contained records of all Don Lewis's operations. The agent stared at her in astonishment and asked if she realized what had happened to her. Catala said she wanted her passport. In exchange for the chip, they arranged for her to leave the country and prepared the documents. A CIA agent escorted her to Miami. Along the way, Catala asked to use the restroom and escape through the window. She then managed to get a bus ticket to Chicago, just as her father had instructed. There, she went to a rundown neighborhood and asked about Emilio. The man named Emilio was Fabio's brother and Catala's uncle. Seeing her, Emilio was overwhelmed with emotion and embraced her tightly. At last, Catala let go and cried in her uncle's arms. The next day, Emilio took her to a private preparatory school and bribed the principal to admit her in the middle of the year. As they left, Catala grew angry, believing she would learn nothing from the school. Catala realized she needed to learn how to become an assassin. Suddenly, Emilio pulled out a pistol and shot a driver, causing the car to crash. He explained that contract killers were everywhere, and if she wanted this life, he could train her. But he warned that without intelligence, she would be dead within 5 years. That's why, if she truly wanted to do this, she first needed to go to school. Catala needed to know what others thought, and she listened in silence. 2 police officers sit in their car, chatting, when suddenly a drunk driver slams into them. A woman staggers out, her words slurred and unclear. The officers quickly restrain her. Around her neck hangs a necklace with a flower pendant. It is Catala, now fully grown. She was taken to the police station, arrested for drunk driving, and locked in a cell overnight. Catala drifted to sleep. Late at night, U.S. Marshals arrived with a prisoner and placed him in the cell. Catala opened her eyes. The drunk driving incident had been nothing but a setup to get inside. The prisoner was the target. She changed into a tight black suit and began picking the lock. She grabbed the spoon from the coffee cup in the cell. Quickly, she turned the camera away to avoid detection. She took a cup of water from the fridge and moved into the electrical room. Using the cup and spoon, she created a spark, then slipped into the ventilation shaft. Seconds later, the leaking water dripped down just enough to trigger a short circuit. Catala slipped through a fan just before the power returned and landed in the men's restroom. The guard left his post to get coffee, giving her the chance to strike. She knocked him out, dragged his body in front of the camera, and tricked the system into unlocking the door. Catala opened the cell and woke the prisoner, ordering him to remove his shirt. When he hesitated, she fired several shots, drawing the chiefs to the scene. They found only the guard conscious with a gun in hand, used as her decoy. As they searched the building, Catala slipped away, climbing to the roof and escaping. After the chaos, Catala crawled back through the vent, returned to her cell, locked the door, and changed clothes. When officers checked, she pretended to be asleep. The next day, after fingerprinting, she was released. Catala left prison wearing a latex suit that carried fake fingerprints. Back home, she danced to music and took a long shower. Later, she visited Danny, a painter, and her casual boyfriend, who only knew her as Jennifer. Catala spent the night with Danny but disappeared the next morning, afraid to reveal her true self. Later, FBI agent Ross learned the victim was part of a series of 22 murders under investigation for 4 years. The murderer was nicknamed the Killer for carving a Catala flower on victims' chests. In New Orleans, CIA agent Richard visited the guarded mansion of Don Lewis, a criminal who had never faced justice. Richard showed him the wounds, but Lewis coldly denied any link. Richard reminded Lewis that the CIA protected him, letting him run cocaine in exchange for information. But he also hinted something was wrong, and Lewis understood. After Richard left, Lewis ordered Marco to deal with it. Lewis suspected Catala was behind the murders and felt he had to finish what he once failed to do. Meanwhile, Catala met Emilio, who angrily gave her a card. He reminded her of his promise to Fabio to protect her and never wanted her to choose this path. Emilio had always protected her by choosing safe jobs, but Catala insisted she wouldn't stop until Lewis was dead. Resigned, Emilio gave her a new target, a hedge fund manager who ran a Ponzi scheme, stole billions, and fled. Meanwhile, Ross reviewed security footage at the FBI office. Some agents thought the killer looked like Catala, but doubted a woman could be such an assassin. At her office, Catala fed steak to her trained dogs. Inside, Peep, Emilio's friend, managed her weapons and vehicles. Catala opened the safe, took out fake passports, and chose one for Mexico. At a hedge fund manager's mansion, he was surrounded by glamorous women. Joking by the pool, he said the sharks would ignore them until a single drop of blood turned them into killers. The hedge fund manager told his guards to bring in more guests. Catala swam through the pool, slipped into the mansion, and drew her silenced pistol. As he stood, he saw the thief and a flower symbol written on his body. He searched the mansion and found all his guards dead. Grabbing 2 guns, he entered the pool area and saw a flower. Catala sat waiting. He pulled the trigger, but the gun was empty. She shot him in the leg and he fell, begging for his life and offering to pay her double. Catala shot him in the chest and he fell into the pool where sharks tore him apart in seconds. Back in the U.S., she went to Danny's apartment, but he was away at an exhibition. She slept on his bed, clutching his shirt, showing her feelings for him, but too afraid to admit it. Ross studied the tag killer's card when the mailman delivered a key clue, a Catala flower found only in Colombia. He tried to link it to cases there, but the request was denied under CIA control. When he called Richard for approval, Richard avoided the issue. Richard warned Lewis to act before Ross connected the clues. Lewis told Marco to hunt Catala and question Colombians until he found her family. Meanwhile, Danny returned home to a dinner Catala had made. She kissed him, but he stopped her, wanting to sit and talk first. Danny and Catala spent the night together again. By noon, he secretly took a photo of her sleeping, then woke her with breakfast, joking it was lunch. Catala grew upset, feeling too exposed, and decided to leave, leaving Danny confused. Catala met Emilio, who was furious after reading the news. She was still leaving her calling card, and now they were hunted. 8 people were shot in a bar, including Emilio's friend. Catala refused to stop, but Emilio warned her that her family was now in danger too. After his son's death, Emilio killed many, but it solved nothing and only endangered his family. He gave Catala a photo of her parents, reminding her of what she could still lose. She broke down in tears and went to church with Emilio and her grandmother, seeming ready to give up revenge. At a calf, Danny told his friend he was falling for his girlfriend Jennifer, though he knew little about her. Seeing her photo, the friend was stunned by her beauty. While Danny dealt with a parking ticket, the friend secretly took his phone and sent the picture to his sister-in-law at the police station. The friend asked his sister-in-law to check Jennifer, not knowing the trouble he started. Ross soon received Catala's photo, traced it to a police station, and arrested the technician tracking it. Comparing the photo with prison footage, he confirmed her identity. Ross had finally identified Catala. At home, she called Danny to share her feelings, but panicked when he mentioned the photo. Learning his friend had seen it, she realized her apartment was surrounded. As a tea stormed in, she turned on the shower, slipped into the vent, and escaped. She ran through several apartments and broke into one, knocking out the tenant who resisted. In a restroom, she recovered a hidden harness and sniper rifle. As Ross and his team breached her apartment, she set explosives, then used the harness to slide down a pipe into the garage. She shot out the cameras and slipped into another vent just before the SWAT team closed in. Trapped in the subway, she managed to sneak away. Catala reached Emilio's home but found it ransacked. Pepe is dead on the floor, and her grandmother is motionless in the kitchen, leaving her heartbroken. She then finds Emilio, tied to a chair and dead. It was clear Emilio had been tortured. Catala apologized, then screamed in grief and rage. Meanwhile, Ross returned home to find her waiting with a gun. She motioned for him to sit and revealed she had rigged his chair with a pressure-sensitive explosive to stop any reckless moves. The Catala flower symbol was meant to draw out Don Lewis, but only now had he taken notice. Now he had stolen the last thing she had left. Catala warned Ross to get the information on Don Lewis from the CIA or she would kill one family member each week until he was as hollow as he had once been. She promised the bomb would be disarmed once she left, and it was. Ross then met Richard to report the situation, but Richard stubbornly refused to share any information. At that moment, Ross received a call from Catala. She warned that Richard must give her the address or he would die. Richard scoffed, believing he was safe behind reinforced glass windows. Catala fired a sniper shot, shattering the glass. Richard was forced to give up the address. Ross asked about his family, but Catala hung up. She had never planned to hurt them. She went to Pepe's garage, grabbed several guns, glanced at the 2 dogs, then drove the armored vehicle straight to Don Lewis. At Don Lewis's mansion, Marco ordered the men to face Catala, but she was too skilled. A sharp whistle sounded, and a rocket blew the room apart. Marco dragged the wounded Lewis out as 4 gunmen sped ahead in a convoy car. Catala rammed her truck into the convoy car, crushing it. She jumped out, opened fire, and killed the guards one by one, even Lewis's closest men. Marco pulled Lewis into a safe room, but after a fierce fight, only Marco and 1 soldier were left alive. Catala killed the guard and fought Marco in a brutal struggle for the gun. She tried to choke him with a towel as he aimed at her, but the weapon was useless. She had already removed the magazine, torn off the slide, and drove it into his neck, killing him. Lewis realized all his men were dead. Unseen by Catala, he slipped out of the safe room and fled in a truck. But his escape ended in a dead end, blocked by a garbage truck. Marco's phone rang. It was Catala. Lewis boasted she would never take him. Then he turned and saw her standing there, flanked by 2 dogs. The dogs tore Don Lewis apart, bringing Catala's revenge to an end. Meanwhile, Danny was arrested and questioned by the FBI. He admitted he knew almost nothing. Ross insisted there were still many unanswered questions. Then Danny's phone rang. It was Catala. She assured him she was safe and gave him 40 seconds before the call could be traced, just enough time for 3 questions. Danny asked for her real name, and Catala answered. He wondered if his little bird would ever return. She left the promise open, saying maybe one day. An agent alerted Ross that Danny had just received a call from Catala, sending them rushing back. Danny whispered that he loved her, bringing tears to her eyes. Ross demanded the phone, but Catala ended the call before revealing anything more. Ross stared at the phone, then released Danny. Catala put on her sunglasses, boarded a bus, and vanished to an unknown destination. Thank you for following the story to the end.